Hi everyone, Jim here. Welcome to Mystery and Mayhem. Today we'll be taking a deep dive into the short story The Hand of Nergal. Well, maybe not a deep dive, but we'll be dipping our toe into the pool, into the deep end of the pool. This story appeared in the Conan Ace paperback number 1. And The Hand of Nergal was a story written by Lynn Carter, and it was based on an untitled fragment by Robert E. Howard, which was, only ran a page or two. There wasn't much to it, and Robert E. Howard must not have wanted to carry on with it, or he found nothing interesting about it, so he just let it go, and he didn't proceed with the story. But it was found among his papers after his death, and it was sent on to L. Sprague de Camp, who gave it to Lynn Carter to expand into a full short story to be included in this volume. Now, it's not the greatest story. I mean, the fragment actually is much more intriguing than the full short story that Lynn Carter wrote. And if you're interested in reading the fragment itself, there's a couple of places you can read it. Now, I have it in this book, The Last Celt, a biobibliography of Robert E. Howard, and you can find the fragment in the miscellaneous section of this book if you happen to find a copy. I think this is a hardcover, but I think it is available in paperback as well, but I'm not too sure how readily available it is at this time. But it also appears in volume 1 of the 3-volume Conan series from Del Rey, The Coming of Conan, and you'll find the fragment in here. And I won't go into the premise of it. Usually anytime I try to give a synopsis or a premise of a story, I fumble it up. So it's safe to say that it involves a mystical gem, a wizard, a beautiful woman, and battles, and all kinds of stuff. But it's got an interesting history. I mean, apart from the fragment and the story that appeared in this book, it was also adapted twice for comic books. Now, Marvel Comics, in 1973, they managed to acquire the rights to the L. Sprague de Camp stories. Now, this is a whole story unto itself. Initially, when they got the Conan license, they were only allowed to adapt the Robert E. Howard stories. And it was only once, I'm assuming, that L. Sprague de Camp noticed the popularity of the character and how the popularity of the comic could work hand in hand with the books. You know, comic book readers would go buy the books and vice versa. Then he allowed Roy Thomas to adapt his stories, or the stories that appeared in the Ace and the Lancer paperbacks. So, The Hand of Nergal, in issue number 30 of Conan the Barbarian for Marvel Comics, was actually the first of these official adaptations of the non-Robert E. Howard Conan stories from the Lancer and Ace paperbacks. And it's in this beautiful issue with that's a Gil Kane cover. And the inside has some awesome artwork by John Buscema and Ernie Chan. Some of the best work, I think, that Ernie Chan did on John Buscema's pencils is in this issue. And that could be because it could be that John Buscema did full pencils for this instead of just layouts. And Ernie Chan's inking is just tight and clean and very detailed. And it just some beautiful, beautiful work in this. Now you can find this reprinted in a couple different places, but the coloring is usually screwed up. Like I prefer the coloring from this specific comic book. Here, I'll show you these pages here too. Now in the story, and actually in Robert E. Howard's fragment as well, there's a passage where Conan finds an unconscious woman on the battlefield. And he believes that she's mortally wounded, and he stands over her with his sword, and he's going to drive his sword through her to put her out of her misery because he believes that she's mortally wounded, and he decides not to, and luckily so, because she's not as badly wounded as he thought, and she's actually the savior of the entire story in the climax of the story. And that being said, it's because Conan basically does nothing in this story. I mean, there's some exciting scenes and there's some interesting things, but Conan is basically just an observer in the story, which is unfortunate. But that is the Marvel Comics adaptation, and you can also find it in this volume of the Dark Horse reprints of the Marvel Comics, and I'm sure you could find it in the Marvel Epic collections and the Omnibus collections as well. But when Dark Horse got the license for the Conan character, they used Robert E. Howard's Fragment as the basis for their story, and they did a completely different story apart from the Lynn Carter story that appeared in the Conan Ace paperback, and that can be found in this volume, Conan the Hand of Nergal. And this has artwork by Thomas Giarello and is written by Timothy Truman. And this is a fairly thick and substantial story. The Robert E. Howard Fragment that they used as the basis for this story doesn't appear till the middle of the book. You know, this is right from the Robert E. Howard Fragment, these scenes here, and you can see how much story came ahead of that. I mean, quite a bit, and it was really well done. I mean, if you guys can get your hands on this, it's well worth it. And there's Conan coming upon, her name was Hildiko in the Ace paperback story, but her name in this, I should have checked that ahead of time, but her name in this adaptation is Areshka, and she's a niece of Strabonus, Lord of Koth. And from that point, it strays completely from the Lynn Carter story. Here's the scene where he thinks she's mortally wounded and he wants to put her out of her misery, and he decides not to. This actual scene, Roy Thomas decided to keep it out of the Marvel adaptation, and I guess that was his decision because he was editor-in-chief at the time. And you know, it could be argued that was the correct decision not to put that in. I mean, that seems a pretty harsh thing for Conan to attempt to do, but I think it was from a place of mercy, which, thank God, he, as I said, he didn't kill her, because she, at the end of the story, you know, talking about that mystical gem, she was the one that took the mystical gem and utilized that to defeat the evil wizard of the story in the original story. Now the Dark Horse story has a creature in it which is almost like a H.P. Lovecraft Cthulhu creature. And also, interestingly enough, it's got a character named Nestor that is featured in this. And Nestor is a character that was featured in another one of Robert E. Howard's a synopsis that he did that never got completed as a story. So that's kind of an interesting little Easter egg, and that's Nestor, who appears on the top of the cover. And I won't give away too many spoilers as to what happened, or you know, what happens with that character. You know, that kind of speaks for itself, that picture. But yeah, it's a very as I said, the original story wasn't the greatest, but it's got an interesting journey that it made. And the Dark Horse comic, Timothy Truman really expanded on that, and he really improved on the original Lynn Carter story. So these are out there, available for you to pick up if you so choose, if you're interested. So that's just a little bit of a a glance into the story, The Hand of Nergal, and the journey that it took through from the fragments, through the prose story, through the comic books, and I thought you guys might be interested in seeing that and learning a bit more about it. So yeah, we'll talk to you soon with hopefully another Cimmerian September episode, and we will talk to you soon. You guys take care. Keep reading.